Hi everyone, this is Yohan and welcome to a new episode. Today I would like to share something a little bit different than the usual bag or wallet making, but rather sewing a piece of garment. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to make your own knit pencil skirt from scratch. This is a knee-length skirt, pullover style with yoga pants style waistband. So it is super comfortable. There is no zipper or closure or elastic. We're simply going to take advantage of the stretchiness of the fabric to make the waistband. The pattern is pretty easy to make. I will teach you how to draft this using your own measurements. Now the fabric that you will need for this project is the medium weight cotton jersey knit fabric that has at least 5% of spandex or lycra in it. The one that I use here is 95% cotton and 5% spandex. And it's very important to make sure that your fabric is not see-through since we're not going to use any lining fabric. Contrary to bag making, when it comes to garment sewing, it is essential to pre-wash your fabric before you sew. I wash my fabric in cold water and then tumble dry low. There's no special machine or tool that you need to sew with knit fabric as long as you have a walking foot and your machine has the zigzag stitch feature. You can read the full list of supplies that you need for this project in the description box down below, or you can visit my website at yohansewingstudio.com. I hope you enjoyed this video, and without further ado, let's jump straight into it. First, we're gonna take some measurements from our body. Start by measuring the waistline. So you wanna measure the smallest part of the waist. Take your tape measurement and then wrap it around your waistline tightly and then record the measurement on a piece of paper. Next, you wanna take your hips measurement, which is the fullest part of your hips. And of course, you wanna also write this on a piece of paper. Next, you wanna measure the distance between your waistline to your hip line. In general, it's going to be about 8 inches. Now you want to measure from your waist to your knee. You can go a little lower or a little higher. I don't recommend to go more than 2 inches below the knee because we are making a skirt without any slit. If your hemline is too low, it may be a little difficult for you to move around. Alright guys, now that we've got all the measurements that we need, we're gonna do a little bit of math. So basically we want to get 1/4 of measurement of the waist and the hips. So you wanna simply divide the waist measurement by 4 and then you wanna divide the hips measurements by 4 as well. For the waist to knee measurement, you wanna add 1/2 inch hem allowance and then write it down. So we're gonna use these numbers to create our skirt pattern. First thing first, you wanna cut a piece of paper. Any paper will work for this project. The paper should be at least 2 inches wider than the 1/4 measurements of your hips and then 2 inches longer than your waist to knee plus hem allowance measurements. Tape your paper on the table just like that. Now this side here will be the center front and back of the skirt, so make sure that it is straight. First, you want to take 1/4 measurement of your hips and then draw a straight line using that measurement. So you want to draw the line about 1 inch away from the top edges. At the right hand side here will be the top edges of the skirt pattern. I'm using my Sharpie here so that you can see it clearly from the camera. Otherwise, you may just want to use pencil. Now from the first line, you want to measure down the distance between the waistline to the hip line. Mark it close to the edge there. And then you want to draw a straight line, the same like before. You want to use 1/4 measurements of your hip. So you should have 2 parallel lines at this point. Now from the first line, you want to measure down the waist to knee plus the hem allowance measurement. So mine is 20.5 inch. Now let's mark it somewhere and then draw a straight line from the center fold, also using the quarter hip measurement. So now you've got 3 parallel lines. Now let's connect these lines together. So you should end up with a rectangle looking just like this. Now back to the first line, you want to measure in 1/4 of your waist measurement and then put a mark right on the line. And then from the waist measurement point, you want to measure up 1/4 inch and then draw a line. From this 1/4 inch point, we're gonna draw a smooth curve, which is gonna be the waistline curve. To do that, I recommend to use a curve ruler, just like this. You can also use French curve. If you use the curve ruler, you wanna first align it with the first line and then shift the ruler until the curved side match the 1/4 inch point. And then you wanna draw the curve. Very simple. Now, if you don't have the ruler, you can just draw it yourself. From the 1/4 inch point there, you wanna draw a smooth curve and blend it with the first line. I'm not used to using my Sharpie here. I should have used a pencil for the curve. So the line doesn't look perfect, but this will do. Now we're gonna draw a curve from this 1/4 inch point down to the second line. If you've got the curve ruler, this will be very simple. So you want to position that just like this, connecting the 1/4 inch point with the 1/4 hip point on the second line there, and then draw the curve. You may also draw the curve without the ruler. So simply draw a smooth curve from the 1/4 inch point there, and then blend it in with the 1/4 hip point. So this is a really smooth curve, okay? Nothing too crazy or too pointy. Alright, you should end up with something like this. Now at the hemline here, you want to measure 1/4 inch up from the bottom and then put the mark right on the side seams there. And then from this 1/4 inch point, we're gonna draw a very smooth curve going down to where the hemline is and then just blend it in. And there you have it, guys. The skirt pattern is pretty much done at this point. Now let's cut this pattern following all the curves that we created, making sure that you don't use your fabric scissors to do this. And that's it, guys. The pattern is done. So let's write this pattern as the skirt front and back. And right here, I'm gonna write center front or back. And then draw an arrow just like this, which indicates that the fabric should be placed on fold on this side. Next, you want to draw a straight arrow in the same direction that I drew here. This arrow indicates the direction of the wale of the knit fabric. I'm going to explain to you more about that later before we do the cutting. Next, we're going to work on the waistband. Here's the formula for that. So you want to take your waist measurement and multiply that by 0.8. So basically you want to take 80% of your waist measurement. From that number you want to add 3/4, which is the seam allowances, since we're going to use 3/8 inch seam allowance here. If you use metric, you want to add 2 centimeter instead. Then you want to divide the number by 2, since we're going to cut the waistband on fold. Here's an example of a waist measurement of 26. So multiply that by 0.8. We're going to get the number of 20.8. Now I'm going to change the 3/4 fraction to 0.75 to make it easier to do the math. The result is 21.55, and I'm going to divide this number by 2, which gives me 10.775. So I'm just going to round this decimal to 10.75, which is the equivalent of 10 and 3/4. So you can always round the number up or down to the nearest fraction. The width of the waistband is 7.5 inch. The seam allowances are already included there, so you don't have to add anything to this number. Here I've already drawn and cut my waistband pattern. This is the fold line, so we're going to fold this from the short side, and here is the wale line indicator. Now it's time to cut the fabric. So you want to fold your fabric wide enough for the skirt pattern panel, and the wale line should be going this direction. So here's what I mean by the wale line if you're not sure what it is. Here's a scarf that I hand knitted. I figured this will be much more obvious for you to see. You see these lines that are formed from the knit stitches? So these are the wale lines of the fabric. So these lines should be formed on the right side of your fabric. You may not be able to see it from the camera here, but if you look closer to your fabric, you will see those lines. When you fold the fabric, you want to make sure that the wale line on the fold here is straight. Again, I'm going to use my scarf as an example here. So you can see that the wale line on fold here is straight. So you don't want it to look like this. When you fold the fabric, this will make your garment stretch oddly and it will look not really nice. So yeah, do your best to make sure that the wale line on fold of your fabric is straight. And once you're happy with it, take the skirt pattern and position that with the center front or back aligned with the fold of the fabric. Now you can use some pattern weights or pins or combination to keep the pattern in place. And then cut using a pair of scissors or rotary cutter, whichever one that you prefer. There's no need to add any seam allowances since we're going to work on minus ease. And you want to cut 2 panels, one for the front and one for the back. We're going to cut the waistband also in the same orientation, so the fold line should be this side and the wale lines should be the same direction as the arrow. Now that we've cut all the panels, it's time to assemble the skirt. So take the skirt front and back panel and lay them right sides together. Pin along the sides and then sew with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I recommend to use moderately narrow zigzag stitch for this. I set up my stitch width and distance at 2 mm. I highly recommend to do a bit of testing before you sew. So if there's necessary adjustment for the width or the distance of the stitch and the tension as well, you can do so beforehand. You may also try experimenting with different type of stretch stitches that come with your machine. I did try several different stitches, but for some reason I just prefer the simple zigzag stitch. I sew with my walking foot attachment, and for the needle I use jersey needle size 90-14. You can also use ballpoint needle or stretch needle. Since knit fabric doesn't fray, you don't necessarily need to finish the raw edges. But if you really want to, you can use another set of zigzag stitch along the edges, the wider ones. Or if your machine has the overlocking stitch feature, you can use that. A lot of machines nowadays do have that. And if you happen to have a serger, you can certainly use your serger. Press to set the seams. Once you've done that, you want to press the seams towards one side. Using a seam roll or tailor's hem or sleeve ironing board will make your life much easier. Next, we want to find the top center point of this skirt. So you want to fold this in half, matching the side seams, and then snip along the top center fold, both the front and the back, about 1/4 of an inch or so. Now take the waistband panel and then you want to fold the long side in half with the right sides facing each other, and then pin and then sew with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I use the same zigzag stitch setting. Once you've done that, snip the center fold, both sides. Now you want to press the seams open, match the seams with the center fold notches, and then clip. Repeat the same to the opposite side, and then snip along the edges of the fold, both sides. Fold the waistband lengthwise. First, simply match the seams there. So the wrong sides should be touching each other, and then pin, and then match all the notches that we snipped before. At the opposite of the seams here, it will be the center fold notches. Let's match them and then pin. Now we're going to find the side notches and then pin. So these two notches will be sitting on the side seams. So your waistband should look just like this at this point. Now take the skirt panel. The side of the waistband that has the seam line here will be sitting at the center back of your skirt panel. Now let's place the waistband into the right side of the skirt. First, we're gonna pin this side with the seam line to the center back of the skirt. Find the notch that we snipped before. So I'm just gonna remove the pin and repin again. Now let's pin the opposite side to the center front of the skirt and then match the side notches to the side seams. Alright, once you've matched all the 4 notches, we're gonna go and sew this together. Since the waistband is smaller than the skirt, when you sew, you want to pull the waistband to match the skirt. So you want to start sewing from one of the pin points. Your hand should be holding on to the next pin point, and as you sew, you want to stretch the waistband to match the skirt. Now it is very important that you only stretch the waistband part. Do not stretch the skirt. Again, I still use the same zigzag stitch setting. As you get to the next pin point, you want to repeat the same. So just stop and then find the next one and then start sewing while stretching your waistband. Once you've sewn the waistband, you can simply trim off the excess seam allowances, or you can finish the raw edges by sewing the wider zigzag stitch along the edges of all these 3 layers so they will stick together. You can also use overlocking stitch that comes with your sewing machine, or use a serger if you happen to have one. And once you've done that, you want to press the seams down towards the skirt. Alright guys, now it's time to hem the skirt. I love using this knit stay tape to help me with the hemming. This is a very lightweight, fusible, stretchy interfacing that has been cut in 1/2 inch strip. I'll link this product in the description box if you want to check it out. Apply the tape on the wrong side of the skirt, right along the bottom edges, with the glue side facing down and then press. I recommend to do a little bit of testing beforehand, and using a pressing cloth over it may be a better idea. Alright guys, once you've done applying the tape, it's time to do the hemming. I also use my zigzag stitch to do the hemming, but this time I set the stitch a slight wider. Now you can easily fold the bottom edges towards the wrong side. The edges of the tape is your gauge, so it is really simple. Now when you sew, you want to use 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Fold the bottom edges towards the wrong side. As you sew, you can simply feel the edges of the tape. Now to be on the safe side, please do a little bit of testing before you do the final hemming, just in case you need to do any adjustment with the setting. You can also use double needle or other stretchy stitches that come with your machine. Once you've done that, you want to press the hemline to set the seams. And there you have it guys, the pencil skirt is done. Thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you next time with another fun sewing projects. Goodbye!